Hi Farhad.
Hi Aditya, welcome back yet again.
Yes, and thank you again for taking your time and
Not at
showing
all,
us.
my pleasure.
You'll be showing us some new exciting product that you've just kind of put in your
Yes,
system.
today we are going to do a little demo of Slate Digital's new virtual bus compressors. Um, I have been personally very excited and waiting for this product for over a year since Steven Slate announced it. And whilst it's been a very long wait for the product, I have to immediately say it's been worth the wait, and well, we'll talk a little more about it. Today, we're going to use a remix of a famous song from Ishqiya called Dil To Acha Hai to demonstrate what the Slate plugins can do. So, why don't we take a look at a little background on it? Virtual Bus Compressors is a trio of plugins based on bus compressors that have been made are and have been made very popular over the years. It's based on, though they don't say so because of, I suppose, copyright infringements. It's based on the SSL G series FX384 bus comp, which was found in the early G series and E series SSL consoles, which more or less was there since the birthplace of modern console technology in a lot of ways. The other one is based on the Focusrite Red 3, which is a very, very nice bus compressor, but perhaps has become much more famous due to Chris Rod Alge's use of it. And the third one, which he calls FG Mu, is loosely based on a mixture of a couple of very new plugins. As we all know, very new hardware. As we all know, that could be like the Manly, or there are a lot of very good, very new compressors. The Phoenix by Thermionic Culture is one. Manly Very Mu is another, and of course the legendary Fairchild 670. The interfaces don't look too much like their respective products. Obviously, again, for any infringement of copyright, I would assume. But there are some very interesting twists in the thing. So, enough talking, let's have a listen. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play you just a drum submix, and then we'll insert the Slate FG Grey compressor on it and see just on the bus and see what it does. Just a quick word, you might think that they are bus compressors, but just because they're called bus compressors should not stop you from trying them out on individual stems or stereo instruments. Uh, when the original products were made, they were not intended specifically as bus compressors, they just happened to be used on the bus, except for maybe the SSL. So let's have a listen. This is with the plug-in bypassed. You can immediately see how much fatter it is. Let me unmute the bass also. That was the FG Grey, which happens to actually be my favorite among all three. Um, you can see that I have the actual hardware here, and I think the true significance of this plugin is every couple of years we have a breakthrough and modeling the process by which they actually model hardware gets just a little better. Well, in this case, there's a quantum jump. I am very comfy working in the box. I love plugins. I am very neutral in the plugins versus hardware thing. Despite all the hardware you've seen, if I could have plugin representations, I probably have 15 times this in terms of plugins. Whatever works for the job. But when you compare like plugins, for example, I have a Vertigo VSC2 and I love Brainworks' plugin of it, but when you compare the hardware to the software, even though they claim and it is a beautifully modeled plugin, there is that thing lacking. There's a width and depth and just something to the real analog machine that the plugin doesn't quite capture. And I'm very happy to say that the Slate plugins do that. When you compare them to the hardware, I mean, I don't have a Focusrite Red 2 here to compare it to, a Red 3 to compare it to, but I do have an SSL bus compressor, and I can tell you I would happily use the plugin. There is no collapse in the stereo field, which generally happens. The image becomes narrower when you're using plugins vis-a-vis using hardware. That's one of the main differences I find. Also, they've added a few tricks to the FG Grey plugin. Couple of things I've noticed. On the G series bus compressor, when you generally switch the attack time from fast to slow, you have to decrease the threshold to generally get the same kind of gain reduction happening. And it seems like they've modeled this in a way so that the threshold gets adjusted for equal gain reduction. So you can actually set the attack time however you want at the same level and see where the grab is happening of the compressor. And I think that's really impressive in a way the hardware cannot do. And they've also managed to model an added transformer saturation that adds a kind of very creamy mid-range thickness that just drives everything. The only time that you can actually compare the hardware and software, and well, for me usually about maybe 75% of the time I can tell which is the hardware, which is still a reason to use the plugin, because unless you can 100% tell which is the hardware and which is the plugin, the hardware doesn't win. One of the things is that at extreme compression settings, yes, you can make out which is the hardware and which is the software. The hardware seems to crap out less when it's compressing very heavily than the plugin. But I have no complaints, because for the price you get 3 amazing models, and you also get a virtual rack where you can stack them in any order and reorder them. You get a mix control on all of them. I don't use compressors as a compressor generally. I mean, if all you want to do is gain reduction, there are perfectly efficient plugins provided with your DAW that can just do that. What I look for is a kind of a vibe. I use them more to color the sound than to actually compress, and I very often when I'm mixing, I set a very high threshold or a very very low ratio or no ratio in the case of some compressors, where no compression is actually happening, but we're just using the sound of the unit to tailor something tailored to the sound. And there's an intense energy shift that happens in the sound. It just somehow pulls everything together, when you have it. And the very new simulation on this, the FG Mu, is superb at doing this. Let's put that one onto a bus and see what you can achieve across the whole mix.
ऐसी उलझी नजर उनसे हटती नहीं, दांत से रेशमी डोर कटती नहीं.
I'm going to lower the volume so you can hear what is exactly happening to the audio when we do this. What I'm going to do is just not add any compression. All we're going to do is just drive the input of the FG Mu and let it add what it does and just adjust the wet dry mix to compensate.
समझते थे कोई हम जैसा हाजी ही होगा. हाय जोर करे कितना शोर करे बेवजह बातों पे गौर करे.
So, just hitting the bypass, you can immediately see what it's doing to the sound. We'll show you a zoom of the screen grab so you can have a look. But essentially all I've done is overdrive the input by 8 dB. We've added a low pass filter so that the extreme bass does not trigger compression, and we've mixed it in at 75% with the mix. And we'll again just see bypassed and unbypassed what happens.
Yo, what's the deal, man?
दिल तो बच्चा है जी, दिल तो बच्चा है जी, थोड़ा कच्चा है जी, हाँ दिल तो बच्चा है जी.
Yo, what's the deal, man?
So you can see obviously this is huge difference. Just you can have a look. Other than a slight treatment on the voice, I haven't got any plugins running on this. This is just levels from the original session. There are no plugins running. All we've done is add an FG gray to the drum bus, to the drum and bass bus, and I've just put an FG Mu on the master bus, and the results are stunning. No EQs, no other compressors, nothing running. As you can see, personally I am very, very excited about this because it represents a lot of changes to come. It represents a huge change in my workflow because I no longer need to mix and match plugins with hardware. The plugin does genuinely sound as good as, if not sometimes better than the hardware. And you can't go wrong. For $250 you get 3 fabulous separate emulations in one plugin of 3 compressors, which even if you were to be able to buy them today would probably cost you somewhere like 75 or 80,000 US dollars. And for $250 that's quite a deal, I would think. I'm very excited because obviously this is just a beginning of a new level of digital recreation, and I'm really looking forward to what Fabrice and Steven bring out next. Virtual EQs is my wish. Thank you for watching.